Well, how's it going, family? We're so glad to see you this morning. It is Palm Sunday. It is Family First. It is Easter Jam. We got a lot to celebrate and sing about. Y'all stand as we sing together. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We worship the God who was. We worship the God who is. We worship the God who evermore will be. He opened the prison doors. He parted the raging seas. My God, He holds the victory. Yeah. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is sure the end is place. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. Oh, 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 oh. We sing to the God who heals. We sing to the God who saves. We sing to the God who always makes a way. He hung up on that cross, then He rose up from that grave, and my God's still rolling stones away. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today, and we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is sure the end is place, and we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. We were the beggars, now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, now we're running free. And we are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. Come on, church. We were the beggars, now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today, and we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place, and we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today, and we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is sure the end is place, and we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. Oh, oh, we shout out your praise. There is joy in this house. There is joy in this house today. Oh, we shout out your praise. We shout out your praise. Y'all can be seated, be seated, be seated. Man, what a great Sunday to be here. It's the first Sunday in April. The pollen's in full bloom again. Caterpillars, right?
Everywhere.
Caterpillars falling like raindrops.
Everywhere.
It's
Isn't there a
great.
song on
Raindrops are falling on
the
my
one.
head. Do you know
I
that's
mean-
about caterpillars?
your head?
You
Something.
say I didn't like the way. Yeah. Well, I used to do cotillion to that song. Anybody take cotillion in here?
No.
No? Well, I can teach you the foxtrot and the waltz if anybody wants to know. I'll try to remember it.
raindrops.
No, but I'm James, and this is Nancy,
Hey,
and we're glad
everybody.
you're here today on this awesome Sunday for lots of reasons. Number
Yes.
one, it's the Sunday before Easter, Palm Sunday. Number two, we've got
lots of fun stuff that she's going to talk about later. And number 3, anytime we gather together in the house of the Lord, it's a good day because God meets us in this place. So I don't know what you walked in here carrying, but I hope that you'll lay it down, that you'll rest, that you'll breathe, that you'll take a moment to remember who you are because of who He is. So if you are a first-time guest with us today, welcome. We would love to connect with you, and the best way to do that is the Connect card. They're located in all 4 corners of the room where the offering bin is, or if you've downloaded the Ashley Ridge app, it's a free download in your app store. You can fill out the Connect card digitally, and that just lets us know, hey, maybe I want more information about baptisms coming up at the end of April, or I want to know more about getting involved in a small group, or being part of a volunteer team here, whatever it is, prayer requests. We would love to hear from you. So fill out that Connect card. Also, grab a white gift bag on your way out if you didn't get one on the way in. And you also picked a great Sunday to come because this Sunday, right after worship today, is New Here, Start Here, Welcome, Meet, and Greet. And it's actually at the end of this hallway. So if you've got kids, grab them. It's family friendly. There's going to be food down there and stuff. The renderings for our new building are down there.
You don't want to miss
the staff, leadership teams, all going to be down there. So right after service today, if you're new or you're new-ish to Ashley Ridge, even if you just have some questions and you've never been to one of these New Here, Start Here meet and greets, we're going to be doing it the first Sunday of every month moving forward, and it's going to be right that direction immediately following worship today. But before that, we got stuff.
We have things to do.
Yeah.
Big things to do, and you don't want to miss it, and you're here and you're not going to miss it. So today is, come on kids, what is it? It's Easter Jam. If you missed it coming in, today is Easter Jam. The first Sunday of every month, we always have our Family First Sunday, but today is Easter Jam, and we cannot wait to celebrate Easter with all of our families. We are celebrating Easter AR Kids style, and we are telling one of the greatest stories ever told today on your kids level. So we can't wait to have fun. There are games, just like crowd favorites, hitting the hibiscus. You know that one?
No, I don't.
Well, you soon will. And we have to deworm the gardens while we're in there.
That makes sense.
So things like that you're not going to miss. So just in case.
It's Easter, y'all.
It's Easter.
Speaking of, it's Holy Week this week.
Yes.
We have the Lord's Supper experience, Lord's Supper experience. We're doing the Lord's Supper today. We have the Last Supper experience on Thursday at the barn on Summers Drive. All those slots are full. So if you haven't signed up, sorry about that. But if you want to send us a message, if someone cancels, we would love to reach out to you and offer you a spot. So if you can't make it and you did sign up, please let us know. But if you want to be on the wait list, also please let us know. You can email us or just shoot us a DM on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. And then next Sunday is Easter Sunday.
Woo! It's gonna be great.
That wasn't the caterpillars are in their eyes. That wasn't.
Get the kids.
It's Easter Sunday, kids. Yep, I'm super excited about this. We're going to have just an awesome time celebrating the fact that Jesus is alive,
Absolutely.
that He came, that He died, that He rose again, and because of that, we can have hope, and we can have purpose, and we can have joy, and there's going to be a whole lot of joy in here because there's going to be a whole lot of Krispy Kreme in here. And we also got a 360 photo booth, so come early for that. Make sure you do that.
You're going to want your spot.
Yep, and Easter, all that stuff can be found at eastertogether.fyi. All the events happening this week. eastertogether.fyi, or go to the homepage at ashleyridgechurch.org, or click the button in the app. But today, we're going to sing a couple more songs, and then elementary kids and your parents, y'all are going to head out when students and their leaders head out, and the rest of you are going to stay in here because we're in the middle of the I Am series, examining Jesus in His own words as we lead up to Easter. So, we got a lot to do today.
A lot to do.
Let's get moving. Thank you, Nancy.
Absolutely.
Y'all stand. We're going to continue to sing together this morning.
I thought the fire went out.
to come. There is no fear in perfect love for those who don't know where to start. But He always meets us where we are. For those with just a little faith is all it takes. He's calling. He's calling. If you got caught up in religion's game, then let Him show you the real thing. For the skeptic still in search of truth, He'll bring the child out of you. What are you still waiting for? You're standing at an open door. He's calling. He's calling. This is the sound of a child coming home. Hallelujah. This is the sound of a welcome prodigal. Hallelujah. This is the sound of a child coming home. Hallelujah. This is the sound of a welcome prodigal. Hallelujah. I thought I was too far gone, but you always leave the light on. Praise God, praise God, praise God, praise God, praise God, praise God. Coming home.
Oh man, we celebrate who He is. We celebrate what He's done. He's done great things. He will do great things. Our past is an indicator of our future because He's faithful, y'all. Let's sing together. Come, let us worship the King. Come, let us bow at His feet. He has done great things. See what a Savior has done. See how His love overcomes. He has done great things. He has done great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquered the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awaken to life. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. You've been faithful through every storm. You'll be faithful forevermore. You will do great things, and I know you will do it again. For your promise is yes and amen. You will do great things. Hey, God, you do great things. We say, oh, hero of heaven, you conquered the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, done great things. We got a lot to be grateful for. Okay. Before I sit you down, we're going to air traffic control here. So AR kids and your families, you're going to go this way, your left, my right. AR students and small group leaders, you're going to go this way, your right, my left. Everybody else, if you're standing here, y'all can have a seat, have a seat, have a seat. Have fun in Easter Jam, fam. It's going to be a great time. We're going to have Easter Jam for the rest of the fam in here next Sunday. But today, it's I Am Jesus in his own words. I'm so excited. I've loved this series. If you've missed any part of this, you can catch up on the Ashley Ridge app, on our YouTube channel, or at ashleyridgechurch.org. This has been a really great series as we examine the I am statements of Jesus in his own words. Y'all check it out.
There you go. Bye, guys. We love you. Y'all feel like we're alone? Are we alone in here? Bye, guys. Oh, my goodness. Family First is always so fun, but then it falls on Easter Jam Sunday, and I really do feel like y'all are in the room like, why can't we have balloons too? So listen, we don't have balloons, but we still get to have fun in here. I think we get to have a lot of fun in here, and so I am grateful that all of you are here because you don't have an elementary kid in your life right now. Do y'all feel good about that? Okay, there you go. Some of y'all are like, yes, we are glad. That's awesome. Well, we have been in this I Am series leading up to Easter, letting Jesus tell us in his own words who he is. He takes this phrase that God had given Moses centuries before, so that when Moses would go to Pharaoh to say, this is who has sent me, God said, you tell them that I am has sent you. And then all these years later, Jesus is going to take that phrase, a phrase that would have been so familiar and so known to his Jewish audience, and he says, I want you to understand who I am. I want you to know who I am. Because, and this is what I've been saying for weeks now, when we don't let Jesus tell us who he is, then we are so tempted to make him who we want him to be or who we think he should be. We have all kinds of ideas about the ways we want Jesus to show up, to work, and to act in our life. Sometimes we even play the game of, if you'll do this, then I'll know that you're real. And I think that Jesus really does invite us to come close, to listen in, to test out these ideas, but he also wants to tell us, this is who I am. He is the light of the world. He is the bread of life. He is the door. He is the good shepherd. And this week, we're walking into a journey at the end of Jesus' life as he makes his way to the cross, where Jesus has just a little bit of time left to sit at a table with his friends. And he chooses his words, I think, so carefully as he pulls them in close and has this last opportunity to say, this is who I am. And if you were here last week, one of the things we really emphasized is when Jesus told us that he was the good shepherd, he made this very close correlation to the fact that he is the good shepherd, and as the good shepherd, this is what he does. I am the good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. Jesus was wanting them to know that this is a theory you're going to get to test. You're going to see that I'm the shepherd that sticks around when things get difficult, that ultimately I am the one willing to lay down my life for the sheep. My entire purpose in coming here is that I might lay down my life for my sheep. He told us that he was the good shepherd. But today, again, as he pulls the disciples in for this last conversation, instead of it being, this is who I am and this is what I do, Jesus is going to get a lot more personal. Because in this moment, he says, this is who I am, and therefore, this is who you are. Jesus wants us to know that this isn't about him. In the same way that we described this place of being the good shepherd, of being this ultimate sacrifice, Jesus is helping us understand that he has come to seek and save the lost. He has come to serve, not to be served. And so ultimately, he needs us to understand. He wants us to understand. He is going to do nothing short of bleed his own blood so that we can understand that who he is tells a new story about who we are. So today, we're going to get this sense of this is who I am, and this is who you are. But it all centers around this moment where Jesus is going, my time with you is running out. We don't have that much time. In fact, this is the last meal that I'm going to eat with you in this present state of affairs. And so I want to tell you something that's going to stick with you. In fact, the word that Jesus is going to use over and over and over again in this moment is he said, I need to tell you what remains, right? What needs to remain when everything else is destroyed, when everything else is run over, when other people have abandoned and gone, what is it that remains? Now, I don't know about y'all, but for me and for my family, mostly because I'm the organizer, and so what they like is what I like, when we, right, Jake? Yes, okay. When we go on vacation, we like to do historical stuff, right? And that's not to say that I don't like to go lay at a beach. That's why we live in Somerville, South Carolina. We can lay on a beach anytime, right? I mean, there's jobs and stuff, but whatever. We have those, and they're relatively close. But when we are planning a trip, when we are going on vacation, when we are going to expend resources, I want to see something old. I want to see something historical. I want to learn something. Y'all are like, yes, we want a vacation with her, right? Like, we read books in advance, and it's all kinds of greatness because we want to learn stuff and see stuff. And so many vacations, have you ever thought about this? This is what we do. We go to see remains, right? Like, we pay money to see stuff that's been destroyed. And yet, it's so incredible to just take in the fact that there are so many people and things that have come before us that tell such a bigger story that we can then sort of start to connect ourselves to. And just a few weeks ago, my husband and I were so fortunate. We got to go on a trip through his work to Italy, which was just absolute bucket list dream trip. Like, stick a fork in me, I'm done. Literally, stick a fork in me, because all the pasta and all the tiramisu and all the gelato, and it was just amazing. Y'all should go, okay? So we got to go to Italy, and when we weren't eating, we were seeing old stuff, right? And it's part of the reason that I do encourage people. I know it is such a resource thing and a time thing, and it's such a privilege whenever you do get to go. But we just don't have anything in America that's that old. And so to walk around these streets and cities that were built by the Roman Empire, and to walk through things and be like, oh yeah, in the 12th century and the 13th century, this is how this worked, and you're actually putting your eyes on it. And in so many ways, it starts to feel surreal. Right? We got to see Michelangelo's David. And y'all, I've seen all the pictures, and and I realized, like, you're not wearing clothes. Okay, so, like, we've seen the pictures, but then to see it was like, unbelievable, this masterpiece that was crafted at a very different time. And the interesting thing is, and one of the things I learned being in the midst, is that Michelangelo was not a profoundly religious man. In fact, all the stories that we heard is that he was an arrogant, not so nice dude that really just knew he was the jam and everybody else was dumb. That's apparently who he was. But when you're that good, you get to be that good. And he was that good because there was this whole room of statues that made it into a very famous museum beside his, and none of them were that good. Okay? They were all better than what I could do and what we could do, right? But then there's this masterpiece where Michelangelo in his time and in his moment in history was trying to tell a very specific story and to bring to life this identity of strength and resilience. And so you can see every vein in David's neck. You can see his muscles flexing in his arm, just pulled out of the granite. And to think that this was done so long ago, and yet it remains as this thing that just, people go to see, and we start to tell this bigger story together. Now, here's the thing. You don't have to go the whole way to Italy, right? During COVID, we filmed several times messages over at Colonial Dorchester, right here in Somerville, off Dorchester Road. And I don't know how big of a nerd you have to be, but the oyster-shelled forts are awesome, okay? Like, if you haven't gone, this is history in our back door about how people decades ago found their way into living by the Ashley River and forming shelter and figuring out how to protect themselves from the mosquitoes and the pollen, because those things remain, all right? Like, when you want to talk about things that remain, these are things that remain. But again, what I don't want us to miss is we pay attention to these things. We visit these things. We keep these things. We shelter these things. We protect these things because of the stories they tell us. What's left? What are the things that stick? What are the things that matter most? And ultimately, how are we all connected? And Jesus, in this moment, is at this meal with his disciples, and he's saying all sorts of stuff about how I'm about to go to a place where you haven't been, but you know the way. And they're like, actually, we don't. You didn't draw us a map. If you could, that'd be helpful. And Jesus is like, no, I am the way. That's another I am statement we're not even getting to in this conversation. He says, but I am the way and the truth and the life. And then he starts to pray with them and for them. And he not only prays for the people that are in the room, he prays for all of those who will follow because of them. So in other words, he prayed for us. He prayed for all of those who would end up in this line, because there would be those who would stick close and who would remain and who would tell this story again and again and again, not only in what they do, but in who they are. Jesus was looking at a group of people that he needed to be the remnant. And so he tells this story, not really a story, but he gives them a metaphor for who he is and who they are and how this is going to make sense years and years and years and years. And I just think Jesus saw us already today and said, I need this to make sense to people who won't have had this moment, that are going to still experience the love and the closeness of Christ. And this is exactly how it's going to work. I'm in John chapter 15. Jesus says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word that I have spoken to you. All right, Jesus is speaking words of comfort. He's already just said things to them like, my peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. You have this connection, but my Father is the gardener, and he's going to do this work of pruning, and it's all going to be around this true vine. Jesus says, I am the true vine. And then he says, remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. And then here it is. Jesus says, I am the vine. You are the branches. This is who I am. This is who you are. I am the vine. You are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you're like a branch that is thrown away and withers, and such branches are picked up and they're thrown into the fire and burned. But if you remain in me, and if my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you would bear much fruit. And again, the fruit, it's people. The fruit is the ones that would come after. From the very beginning, when Jesus called his disciples, he said, come, I am going to help you fish for people. You're going to bear fruit. You're going to bear fruit. You're going to bear the fruit of others being able to find hope in Jesus, because you remain in me. This is my Father's glory, that you bear this fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Don't miss this. Here's the connection. My Father is the gardener. He's taken care of the vine. As my Father has loved me, I have loved you. And now you remain in my love. Jesus tells us who he is, and he tells us who we are, and he paints this just crystal clear. Jesus told some confusing stories. This isn't one of them. Jesus paints a crystal clear connection of how he is going to hold on to us if we would simply remain in him. I wrote down in my notes that 8 times in this very short part of this very long discourse that Jesus is having with his disciples, that 8 times he uses the word remain. But as I was reading it, I realized there was one that I didn't highlight. So I actually think it's 9. 9 times in the course of this very short part of the conversation, Jesus is imparting this idea of, I need you to remain. I need you to be the remains. I'm going to stay with you. I'm going to stay with you. It's going to look different, but I'm going to stay with you. And I need you to stay with me. And if we can do that, then other people you've never met, some people you have met, some people that you love desperately, that you so desperately want to have a connection and a hope. If you'll remain in me, then we can bear fruit. Can't do it on your own. You can't save the world. You can't save the people that you're trying to save on your own. But if we connect to Jesus, Jesus says, I am the true vine. And at this point, he's already told them, I'm also the good shepherd. I am the way. Get connected to me. Remain in my love, and I will remain with you. And so many times, I think when we hear this word remain, we can often think it feels very passive, right? To remain feels like I'm just sticking around and I didn't go anywhere, right? It's like when a teacher says to a classroom full of students, y'all remain here, I need to go check on something, right? Their job is not to move. They don't have to do anything. They just have to not move. And the dictionary says that to remain means to stay or continue. But here's the thing, to stay or continue, especially after similar or related people or things have ceased to stay or continue. And what we know is that there is constantly this pull away. There is constantly a pull to say, I know that you figured out something over there, and maybe you had a moment, maybe you had an experience, maybe there was some truth that started to connect with you about who God is, but you know what? We got a lot of other things going on right now. We have a lot of things we need to take care of. We need some people who are going to be the people who are going to go rescue everybody else. And so if you just, don't worry about that, we get pulled away. And so what we know is this idea of remaining, and then especially when we dig into this word that Jesus was using, it's this idea of abiding, of dwelling, of actively staying connected. And we know that this is a fight. We talked about this last year. We were talking about practices of faith, and we were talking about prayer and the fact that, the biggest thing that keeps us from praying is that we are just so easy to distract, right? Like the second we get quiet, we think about everything else. I mean, it is such a challenge. I told y'all, I can't even pray with my phone within reaching distance anymore. And I can't read my Bible on my phone, even though that's so incredibly accessible. Y'all can do it. You're better than me. But I cannot read my Bible on my phone because it's connected to all of these other apps and things and people that are trying to talk to me. And I want to talk to them. And I like people. And so I get distracted. And in this moment, Jesus is saying, listen, I want you to connect to so many other people. Oh my goodness, you're going to bear so much fruit if we do this right. You're going to bear so much fruit. You have no idea. People 2,000 years from now are going to sing crazy songs with guitars and drums. You just stick with me, right? And I'm sure Peter was like, yeah, no. But he was like, no. I promise you, thousands of years from now, in high school auditoriums, people are going to gather, and there's going to be carrot balloons in the cafeteria. You guys just have no idea. If you just stick with me, so many other people are going to get this. But it's all going to hinge on whether you can remain in me. Will you be the ones that continue and that stay and that fight to not get distracted and to not get complacent? Oh, there's a word, right? We get complacent. Jesus isn't going anywhere. I can always come back. There are other people out there. We get complacent. Jesus said, no. 9 different times he says, I need you to actively stay engaged. Stick with me. Remain in me. Fight for the time and the space in your heart and in your mind and in your life that you are going to actively cede control to Jesus. Right? Because on our own, we're going to just keep pulling it back inch by inch by inch. But Jesus says, I need you to stick with me. I need you to keep staying in my word, remaining in me. We have to stay connected. Jesus says, I am the vine. You are the branches. You're already clean because I have done this work and I am about to do this work that's going to make way for you to be forgiven. Man, you guys think you're unclean. You're going to do stuff. You're going to screw up big time. Some of you, you're going to betray me. You're going to deny me. And Jesus is like, but what I'm doing is so big and so complete that this way that I have made for you is not going to be shaken or messed up. You're clean because I have made you clean. This is who you are, sons, daughters, inheritors of the kingdom of God. But I am the one true vine. And I need you and I want you to stay connected because you are the branches. So the other thing that we saw when we were in Italy, we were entirely in the Florence and the Tuscany region. And so as you can imagine, one of the days, Clark and I did the whole Vespa tour thing. It's like Dumb and Dumber, right? Like we had our little Vespas, and we're out riding around the countryside. It was awesome. We each had our own because that's how our marriage works. And we're riding around the countryside in these Vespas, and we're just, like looking around and just seeing like everything that we'd seen in pictures and all of these vines. But of course, it's not at all harvest season. Harvest season for the grapes comes way later into the fall. And so we were actually there, and I promise I didn't plan this, but we were there for pruning season. And so as we're riding around the countryside, as we're seeing all of these vines and we're seeing how closely and how carefully they're tying them together and they're forming them into this L shape, and then along the edges of the roads, there were all of these piles of sticks. There were all of these branches that they had pruned because they were growing in funky ways, and they were going to end up getting in the way of the growth when harvest time came. And so there were all these piles where they had clearly recently gone through. They were pulling all the branches that were going to be helpful, and they were sitting on the side of the road waiting to be burned. Okay, and then you'd see all these like little things of smoke coming up because there was these piles. So I read this and I thought, whoa, Jesus, like I'm here with you because I see this process. He's saying this is what happens to the branches that they got complacent and they got lazy about which way they were growing, and they got unhelpful and they got distracted. And so they were pulled from the vine. That doesn't have to be your story. I'm the vine, and I'm going to hold fast to you who are the branches if you will simply do this work of remaining in me. And when we do that, it's all about this connection that we make. This connection that is so profound that ends up transcending all of the particulars of our life. And so the coolest thing about that particular day was not seeing these branches and stuff. It would be more exciting to be there during harvest season and the whole stomping the grapes and all of that bit. It's actually not real cool to just see the brown, barely anything vines. But what was really, really amazing is that just the day before, Clark and I had been walking through Florence, seeing all these old cathedrals, mesmerized by the remains and all this old stuff. But I had made the comment to him that night. I said, it does break my heart a little bit every time we travel and we see these things, and especially in Europe, but more and more so even here today, you see these massive cathedrals and they're museums. And while they remain and there's a story to be told, there's both this beautiful story and also this frustrating story that feels like, is this still here? There is nothing else that I'm seeing in this that tells me that the faith in a God so big that these cathedrals were built in part to honor, in part to show how awesome they were. But they built these massive cathedrals that now are open as museums and only occasionally as houses of worship. And I had just told Clark, I said, it is just kind of tough to see some of that. And then the very next day, we're out, we're riding our Vespas, we're doing this whole, we're free, the kids are in another country, just living it up and doing our thing. And the thing on the tour guide that when I signed up for it said that lunch would be at a winery. And so, I'm expecting things that I'd also seen in pictures, like a restaurant that would be at one of these, all these different wineries that are out there. But we were riding around for a little bit. There were just 5 of us, 4 of us, and then a tour guide. The other 2 were 19-year-old college students, and Clark and I were asked if we were their parents. So I was really questioning the presence of faith in this country because I was like, that hurt my heart. But I tell you that because it ties in. So, it's just the 4 of us, and we're riding around with this guide, and it comes time for lunch, and we just pull into the backyard of this rural home out in Tuscany. And when I say this rural home, there was nothing fancy about it. There were things falling down all over the place. There was a cat running out in the yard like you would see at any other farm or anything like that. And we walked into this family's home where we were invited to sit at their kitchen table. Now, they do, in fact, they are farmers, so they did grow wine, and they do have olive trees, and so they had their homemade stuff that they produce and do right there, their olive oil and their wines and all this other stuff. But this winery was the kitchen table of the Gamici family. And it was just so cool as we walked in and we're like, wow, like this is such an authentic experience. And our guide spoke English, but as Ma Gamici started to come out and she started to put all this, the different things on the table, and she's just coming out with course after course after course, like there were 24 of us and not 4 of us that were going to eat it, but I want you to know I did my part. But she's bringing out all this food that she's sitting in front of us, and she's got some very broken English, and about halfway through the lunch, her husband comes out, and he was just fabulous. Giovanni was his name. Of course, Giovanni was his name. And is this like someone put this whole thing on? Giovanni comes out, and he starts to tell us in his really broken English that he and Ma Gamici are about to celebrate 50 years of marriage in just 2 weeks. So that would actually be about now. They're celebrating 50 years of marriage, and he starts to tell us this story because we're like, your home is beautiful. Thank you so much for welcoming us into it. And he started to laugh, and he said, years and years and years ago, I won't even pretend an Italian accent. He says, years and years ago, we bought this piece of land. And we just bought it because it was beautiful and it was all that we could afford, but we had these dreams about what it could be someday. And then he said, and then a few years later, he said, I went to a bank and I asked them for a loan to build my house, and they laughed. And I was like, I know how you feel. We're building a church. And then I didn't tell him that. And then he's just talking about, he said, but we were so committed to this process. And he started to tell us stories of how these last several decades, they've spent their whole lives running this farm and welcoming as many people from as many places as they could to sit around their table. He started to tell us about how they have a lot of troubled teenagers who come out and they've got to put in some time working on the farm. And if they put in the time, then they bring them in and they sit them around the table. And they said, we just figured it was the best way that we could love these kids and make a difference in these kids' lives. And they're just telling us these amazing stories about all these people that have eaten around their table. And he said, that's how you stay married 50 years. You never eat alone, right? Like all these people. He was so great. He's like, all these people, they were eating at their table. And lunch finished, and it was time for us to get ready to leave. And Ma Gamici came out of the kitchen long enough for us to start having a conversation. And Clark was over having another conversation. But I'm standing there beside these 2 19-year-old college students who were spring breaking across Europe. God bless them. And I'm standing there beside them, and Ma Gamici comes out, and I'm telling her thank you and how beautiful and how grateful we are for this amazing lunch. And I said, and I loved hearing these stories of all the people that have eaten around your table. And she took my hand, and she said, Jen, it's because we're people of faith. She said, it's because we believe that Jesus made a family so big that the table will never be big enough. She said, we have a God who is hope in a dark world. And y'all, the next 5 minutes, she just stood there sharing her testimony of faith. She has no idea what I do. She has no idea anything that we might believe either. She has no idea what these 2 19-year-olds believe or think. She is just telling me, she said, this isn't what a lot of people think, but this is why we do. Everything we do is because God has loved us, and we have just spent our lives welcoming people because the family is so big. And I just looked at her, and at that point, I'm just in tears. And I said, we're people of faith too. I said, actually, I'm a pastor. I said, would you like to come preach at my church? And listen, I'm going to keep working on it because she did tell me she's never been to the U.S. and she's hoping to do it before she loses her mind. That's what she told me. And so I said, I really want you to come because that's it. The family is so big. Because even in a world that feels like it is so broken, we did not need another shooting this week in a school to tell us that this world is broken, but there it is, and our hearts are shattered, and this world is broken, and it's dark, and it hurts. And I'm tired of it, and I know you are too. I know you are too. Sin is real. Sin is real, and we're supposed to hate sin. It is real. Evil is real. But we are not without hope. Because Jesus is the true vine, and he says, remain in me, and I will remain in you, and together, I don't care what the world does, we will bear much fruit. That fruit, remain in my love, and this love gets bigger because the family is big. That's our faith. That's our faith, guys. And I know this week's been hard. And I don't have it all figured out. But what I know is that my Savior is the true vine, and he holds on to us. And we get to hold on to him. And even though we start to get lost and we look out in the world and we go, this is dead and this is done, and is any of it still real? And then you run in to Magamichi, who reminds us that the family is big. And it's why I think Jesus, on that last night, set a table. And he didn't set a fancy table. In part, it was because it was Passover. We're going to talk more about that on Thursday. But also, in part, because Jesus was helping us to see what was going to remain. And he said, even after I'm no longer with you, you are going to sit at a table again and again and again. And every time you do it, I want you to break the bread, and I want you to drink the cup, and I want you to remember. I want you to remember what I have done for you. That even though the world breaks us, just like it broke Jesus, ripped him from limb to limb, tore at his flesh, Jesus said, I need you to remember that even though it's broken, I am the one who holds it and puts it back together. Remain in me. And whenever you sit at this table, come back to the table, come back to the table, come back to the table again and again and again. Your kitchen table, this table, the table with your friends, the table with your kids, the table with your toddler kids. Y'all don't have those. The table with your 20-something-year-old kids, the table with your 20-something-year-old grandkids. Come back to the table, come back to the table. And remember that my body was broken for you. And remember that the blood spilled out of my body. It was poured out so that you won't forget, because you're going to remember, because you're going to remain, that you won't forget that this was shed for you. The forgiveness is enough to heal this whole crazy world if we would just hold on tight and cling to the one who is our hope. And so this is our act of faith this week, guys. Coming out of a week like this past one, but name any week. But walking into this week, this holy week, our job is to move to the cross with Jesus. Our job is to move to the cross and tell this story again and again and again of a Savior who refused to leave us in darkness, who refused to not do something about the evil he never intended for this world. We move toward Jesus, and we move with Jesus, and we watch him show us that he will lay down his life only to take it back up again. And he says, and if you will be the ones who stick around, hold on to this when everything else is breaking. If you will be the ones that will let me grow fruit, if you will be the ones, this is where it's so easy. This is so easy, guys. Who will just keep setting a table. Just keep setting a table. And just keep inviting people. And they may not come the first time or the 20th time, but just keep setting tables. I don't care if it's in your living room around a charcuterie board or at your kitchen table. I don't care if you can make Cheerios or if you can make shrimp and grits. Set a table and invite people to come and tell them that the family of God is big. Jesus says, remain. Stay here. Remain in my love. This love that was given to me by the Father, remain in me, and I also will actively remain in you. And together we will know. And together we will be a witness to this world that God gets the final say. That God holds the little children. That God's love is the one true, real, constant, eternal, can't be taken away thing. And we get to share it. And we get to live it. And we get to come to the table and remain with the one who sticks with us to the very end. Let's pray. God, it's more than we can comprehend. We tell this story, we get ready to walk into a week that goes from Hosanna to Crucify, and then we come back just 1 week later and we throw up our hands and we celebrate this foundational truth that you're alive, that death couldn't hold you under, that it doesn't win. And God, somehow we still miss it. We still run right past it. We're still so tempted to give in to the hopelessness and the frustrations. And God, I pray that we would hear Jesus today, that we would take him at his word when he says, remain in me, and I will remain in you. And together, we will bear much fruit. So God, thank you for this table again today. Pray that you would pour out your Spirit on all of us that are gathered here right now. Pour out your Spirit on us just as you poured out your Spirit to your disciples, that they would know that you are real, that you are with us. Meet us in this meal. Show us again that even though we have missed the mark so many times, you have forgiven us. God, help us to come to this table and to be strengthened, to be reminded that you are actually everything that we need. Meet us now. Meet us here. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Y'all, because it is Family First and a lot of the room has left, we're going to do just 2 stations for communion up front. And so I'm going to ask you in just a minute, whenever you're ready and would like to receive, you don't have to be a part of this church. It might be your first Sunday here, but the table is set by Jesus. And if you would like to come, then you are invited. And this table is yours to share in. And so we've got 2 sets of people that are going to be serving, and I'm going to invite you, whenever you're ready, come via the center aisles so that you can go back around the sides. Our prayer team is over on this side of the room, and they would love the opportunity to pray with you this morning. And the last bit of instruction I want to give you is if you have an allergy of any kind, gluten, dairy, soy, nut, whatever, we've got bread for that. So just let the servers know that you need the allergy-free bread so that we can share that with you. But y'all, we need to go slow. One of the ushers was teasing me before worship this morning. I was running around like chicken with my head cut off. That's not unusual. And he kept stopping me and saying, Jen, breathe. Breathe. Because again, our tendency is to get distracted and to run around like we're going to fix it all. Jesus sat his followers down. He brought them to a table. And he said, take this bread.
dip it in the cup. Eat and remember. This is my body. This is my blood, given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. This is what remains. Will you come?
As we go this week into Holy Week and we remember the length to which Jesus walked so that we might be forgiven, we might be set free, redeemed. Pray that you reflect this week. Take that message wherever you go. Invite someone to sit with you next Sunday for Easter, 10 o'clock, as we celebrate and sing together who he is and what he's done. All the details for this upcoming week can be found at eastertogether.fyi. Y'all have a great Sunday. We'll see you right back here for Easter next week. Apparently the mic started doing it again. Ben, did you hear it again? Yep.
Hey everybody, James here. Thanks so much for joining us today for worship from wherever you are. We hope that you found some joy today in His presence. We hope that you've been challenged. We hope that you've been convicted. We hope that you have learned something that you can take with you and apply to your daily life, because that's what it's all about, right? Following Jesus, not just believing in Jesus. So we want to help you do that. And one of the ways you can do that is by talking about it during the week at home. In fact, with every single one of our messages, there's a button attached to the message that says talk about it. So just click that. There's some questions there that you can talk over around the table with your family or with your small group. And as always, we want to hear from you. We want to help you take that next step toward Jesus, whatever that is. So fill out the Connect card for us. That's also on the homepage of the App Store, or you can go to cc.ashleyridgechurch.org. Let us know what prayer requests you have. Let us know what your next steps are, whether that's baptism or learning more about what it means to follow Jesus. Or maybe you're ready to get plugged into a small group. We want to help you take that next step in your faith journey. Invite somebody to join you next week. We'll see you right back here.